This is a Tamagotchi, a handheld virtual reality pet that pretty much every kid growing up in the 90s is familiar with.
Well, if it isn't Tamagotchi, her new favorite pet. Yes! So what's that make me, fish sticks?
What's really interesting though is how this tiny little toy was able to create a franchise that generated over $6.2 billion in sales and became one of the most successful products of all time. So today I'm going to show you the secrets behind how Tamagotchi was able to capture the hearts, minds, and wallets of an entire generation, and the business, marketing, and psychological principles behind their genius strategy and overall branding and design. But first, just to make sure we're all on the same page, a 15-second crash course on the history of Tamagotchi. The name Tamagotchi comes from combining two different Japanese words, tamago for egg and wachi for watch. So literally, an egg watch. The first Tamagotchi went on sale in Japan of November 1996 and was an immediate hit with the audience, and it took less than a year for 10 million Tamagotchi units to be sold. Knowing that they were onto something, in May of 1997, Bandai, the company responsible for Tamagotchi, started rolling it out to American customers. The famous toy store FAO Schwarz sold 30,000 Tamagotchi units in the first 3 days alone, and the television home shopping network, QVC, somehow managed to sell 6,000 Tamagotchi units in just 5 minutes. Toys R Us said that the virtual pet was on track to be the hottest toy of the year, and by mid-June, over 3.5 million Tamagotchis were sold in the US alone. And as of today, there have been over 83 million Tamagotchis sold. It's responsible for a $6.2 billion franchise, and its parent company Bandai is now worth over $16 billion. So clearly they did something right here. But the real question is, how'd they do it? How did a small, simple, and maybe even silly little toy manage to take the world by storm and sell over 83 million units? And more importantly, what are the lessons that you can learn from their success and apply to your business, your idea, or your creation? Well, the first ingredient to the Tamagotchi recipe for success came down to their ability to tap into continual play. So let's unpack that now. If you've never played with a Tamagotchi before, let me bring you up to speed on our little friends. When you first boot up your little Tama, you'll see it as an egg. If you do things right, you'll be able to support it in its journey towards adulthood and guide it and nurture it through the stages from egg to baby, baby to child, child to teen, and then teen to adult. So the concept is simple. Keep your Tamagotchi alive by feeding it, caring for it, playing with it when it gets sad, and even cleaning up after it. Yes, Tamagotchis go to the bathroom. But while the concept is simple, the actual raising, or parenting for lack of a better term, of your little Tamagotchi is a whole lot more involved. Because while part of the fun of your little Tamagotchi is getting to feed it and play with it and take care of it, the other side of the equation is that you have to feed it and play with it and take care of it. Otherwise, it'll become a nightmare to deal with. It'll annoy you, it might pack up its stuff and leave, or it might just die. And there are a lot of ways that it can die. From not looking after it and not caring for it properly, not taking care of it when it gets sick, not cleaning up after it, old age if you're lucky, sometimes even predators. Long story short, looking after your Tamagotchi could quickly become a full-time job or obsession. And that's exactly what happened for way too many people, especially when they were first released and they didn't come with a pause button, which meant they required pretty much around-the-clock attention. The result was that many kids were checking on their Tamagotchis while at school, and when teachers finally cracked down on it and said that they were a distraction, which they were, the responsibility of that was passed along to the parents, who not only had other parental responsibilities like paying the bills and taking care of things and, looking after their actual living children, but now had to take care of this strange little annoying pet. But that's part of what made them so addictive. The fact that they needed attention. And so they were constantly being dragged out of backpacks and pockets and bags wherever they went. And this is important for a number of different things. The first of which is that it was constantly reminding the user of their importance and their existence. Next, it created a powerful and almost compulsive habit. People would hear the little beep, they'd pull out their Tamagotchi, they'd feed it or clean up after it or do whatever they needed to do, and they'd put it away, almost subconsciously. But maybe most important of all was the social status or the signaling of pulling out a Tamagotchi and showing others that this is something that you had, that you believed in, and that you were part of a tribe or a cult of people with similar beliefs and interests. And social proof is incredibly powerful, so let's talk about that next. We as humans are social creatures, and we're always looking around at other people to see what they're doing, thinking, and buying. In psychology, we have a term for this called the bandwagon effect, which describes how we, as people, adopt certain behaviors or attitudes or styles simply because others are doing it too. In other interesting work by René Girard, he pioneered a theory called the mimetic theory of desire, which basically just says that we want what other people want. Desire is therefore socially based. This is how fads turn into trends and trends turn into cultures. It starts with one, then another, until a tipping point is reached and enough people buy into the idea that people like us do things like this. And that's exactly what happened with the Tamagotchi. The nature of the Tamagotchi means that just to keep the thing alive, you constantly have to be taking it out of a bag or a backpack or a pocket to feed it, to look after it, and to play with it. Now, even though this behavior is relatively commonplace today thanks to the cell phone, well, at the time it was relatively new. And this new technology was something that not a lot of people had experience with. In fact, they were even marketed as the virtual reality pet. When you think of virtual reality, you probably don't think of a low-resolution, pixelated character that poops on your screen. But this was actually some pretty cutting-edge technology back then. I mean, these were the days of rollerblades, pagers, floppy disks, and most cars still had cassette tape decks in them. And virtual reality is really just about using computer technology to create a simulated environment anyway. And that's exactly what a Tamagotchi was. A simulated environment where you could interact and engage with your little Tama. That's right, that's what the cool kids are calling them these days, apparently. The Tamagotchi virtual pet, which as the story goes, was created as a way for kids to get to bring a pet along with them on vacation, well, it pretty much did act like a real pet. A smaller, more annoying, and way more delicate version of an actual pet, but a pet nonetheless. And so it was the technological part of the pet that drew in people based on their love of the shiny and the new. But there was something way more powerful at play, which was the psychological phenomenon known as anthropomorphism, which, fun fact, is also one of the hardest words to say. Anthropomorphism. 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 Anthropomorphism is a big and hard to say word that basically just describes the tendency to describe both animals and non-living things using human characteristics. In other words, well, you and I both know that Timmy here isn't actually alive. Yeah, I gave him a name. Well, the human species has been anthropomorphizing things since the dawn of time. If you've ever had a stuffed animal as a kid, then you know what this is all about. Giving inanimate objects names and personalities and other human characteristics that allow us to bond with them. Sounds kinda weird, but it's not, and it's a core part of human psychology. Tamagotchi grabbed the attention of millions of children and adults, and it gave them a sense of responsibility and a feeling of creating an interpersonal relationship. And when this happened, the Tamagotchi transitioned from being a simple toy to being perceived as a very real, albeit still digital, virtual pet. And you can't put a price tag on love. That is, unless you're Disney, whose company is worth around $150 billion. But the marketing strategy that they used to grow to this level is even more impressive. And you can see exactly what they did so you can apply some of those exact same strategies to your business, your idea, or your creation just by checking out the video I've got linked up right here. So make sure to check it out now, and I'll see you in the next video. It was a year later though, in 1923, that Disney first produced Alice in Cartoonland. This was a combination of both animation and live action, and was originally intended to be a pilot in a whole series of future